Hi, this is Sue for Parkies and Me, My Journey with Parkinson's. I've called this It Is Better to Know, and what that's about is I've always been a firm believer in knowing when I have some health issues, exactly what's going on, because for me it is much easier to deal with the known than to wonder about what might be happening within my body. Now, I have a number of things wrong with me. Well, they're part of my makeup, I suppose. And for each of the things that have happened to me with my health, I have been somebody who goes to the doctor reasonably early on in the piece. And I was watching a program that I like, and the young girl in this program, her father had Huntington's disease. And Huntington's I don't know much about, but the show talked about how it was a hereditary condition and you had a 50-50 chance of getting it if one of your parents had Huntington's disease. And she was about, I don't know, 16, 17, something like that. And up to that point she had chosen not to be assessed or not to have any tests to find out whether she had Huntington's or whether she carried the gene, or basically where she stood on whether Huntington's was going to be part of her personal journey. And I know it must be tempting for some people to just think, I'm going to ignore the symptoms, they will go away, they don't mean anything, and talk yourself out of getting an answer as to why you might be feeling some things that you're feeling. And that's a personal choice, and we're all individuals and do things in different ways. But for me, I've always been someone who's wanted to know exactly what's going on with my body, with my health, and then I'm better equipped to combat it or to accommodate it with some modifications and medication or whatever needs to happen. But when you have a health conditions, whether it be Huntington's, whether it be Parkinson's, for me the known is much less scary than the unknown. And sure, there will be unknowns with Parkinson's. My mum and my dad both had Parkinson's, and both of them had different journeys. Quite different things happened for them as individuals with their Parkinson's journey. Now, I've noticed that I have been diagnosed, this is my 6th year. I was diagnosed on the 15th of the 12th, 2020, and so I'm entering my 6th year with this condition having been diagnosed. I don't know how many years prior I could have been diagnosed, but I didn't really have any huge symptoms up until the time that I went to my GP and said to him that I wanted to be tested. Now, he asked me why I wanted to be tested, and he knew that both my parents had Parkinson's. And I think what I felt at the time, and I still feel, that he thought that I was being overly paranoid, that knowing that both my parents had Parkinson's, that I had maybe talked myself into being somebody with Parkinson's as well. But, I mean, who would really do that? Who would try and make their symptoms fit so that they had a condition like Parkinson's? But the first sign that I had, we were in Hanma with the grandchildren, and the youngest one was only about, I think, 8 or something like that. And we went to the hot pools, and there's these huge slide things where you have to sit on a big donut, and you go round and round in the water. And for me, it was quite scary, but the little one loved it. But while we were waiting to have our turn, I started to get cold, and I noticed that I was shivering, which is understandable. I was wet, it was not the warmest, and I was standing there waiting to go up on this ride. So I started shivering, but not only did I shiver, but my left arm started to shake really uncontrollably. And so much so that it was basically slapping the side of my leg, really. And so I held it to my side with my other arm, but it took ages for it to settle. And I thought, this is different, this has never happened before. And I thought, I need to get this looked into. And around that time, before I'd even gone to the GP, my husband and I went to Kaikoura, and we were going to do a bushwalk. And my husband is great at finding hills at the beginning of our walks, which I hate before my legs are warmed up. And so I was trudging up this hill thinking, oh God, another bloody hill to start the day. Could have started off a bit gentler. And then we get to a stile. So we get to the stile and my husband goes over, easy as, and then I get to the stile and I try to get my leg up onto the stile and then the second leg up, and it took me 2 or 3 goes to get from the ground and up onto the top sort of platform of the stile. And then getting my leg actually over the top took several goes as well. And I thought, this is not normal. I can be a little bit sort of stiff and sore and all that sort of thing, and maybe struggled a little bit. But when it came to pulling myself up off the ground onto that first step, I felt so heavy. I didn't know if I'd had the strength to do it, and it was really unusual. And I thought, this has got to be looked into. And so I made an appointment with my GP, and so I was sitting in his office and I was telling him these things that I've just been talking about, and he said to me, well, I've been sitting here watching you and there's been no tremors since I've been watching you. Now, I forgot, but I had told him that sometimes when I was sitting watching television or when I was in bed, it's always been my left hand side. So when I was in bed, the hand that sort of goes under my head would start to tremor, and not violently, but certainly noticeable enough and lasting long enough to be a bit concerning. And then I'd be sitting on the couch watching television and it would start to move and shake. And this happened a few times and I thought, yeah, I think this needs to be checked out. So long story short, I got the GP to agree to refer me to a specialist, and I was fortunate that I was able to see the specialist that my parents had both gone to. His registrar met with me first, and she asked me a number of questions, got me to do a few little bits and pieces, and then she left the room and went to talk to the specialist. About 5 to 10 minutes later, they came in the room and he sat down and he looks me in the eye and he said, Sue, I have to say that you definitely have Parkinson's. To which I responded, are you sure? Is there any doubt? And he said, no doubt whatsoever. So from that moment on, I was a person with Parkinson's. Now, he had a good talk to me and he said that the best thing was to go on medication immediately, and that's what I did. And apparently, the research shows that the sooner you get on medication, the better the outcome for you. So I certainly wanted to reduce my existing symptoms and stave off any other symptoms that might occur by going on this medication. And by and large, I haven't had many problems with the medication, if at all. And I had to go and see my GP shortly afterwards. I sat down and I actually said to him, oh, by the way, I have been diagnosed with Parkinson's. And he was very surprised. He didn't think I had enough symptoms. And he said, what's next? And I said, the specialist has put me on medications to help sort out the existing symptoms and stave off any further. And he said, I'm really surprised that the specialist would give you medication so soon when you're very much in the beginning stages. And I said, well, research shows that the sooner you get onto medications, the better outcome you will have, and the longer hopefully you will have. So yeah, he was quite surprised that I got on medication, but it was the best thing I could have done, because like even now 6 years later, I hardly ever have tremors. The things that I notice though is if I get really stressed, like if I'm in the dentist chair, which I hate, it freaks me out. It freaks me out because of the water that they squirt into your mouth and throat. I always worry that I'm going to gag on it or it's going to choke me or drown me, and I can't relax. I get really, really stressed. Many of the people that I read about having been diagnosed, maybe about the same time as myself, those who are 5-6 years in, are really, really badly affected. They have got huge sort of mobility, cognitive, all sorts of issues. And it makes me wonder whether I am unusual in my presentation and my needing to get my diagnosis basically sorted. Because I think perhaps maybe the people who were diagnosed the same amount of time as me might have basically not kind of attended to their symptoms. Maybe they tried to ignore their symptoms, hoping that it would go away and not wanting to fully acknowledge that there was some change happening within their body. I think for myself, the fact that I'm always quite in tune with my body. If anything seems out of kilter, then I will get myself off to the doctor so things don't get to a critical stage, because I endeavour to do something about them as early on in the piece as I can. And for me, I do feel it's better to know what's happening with my body. I do think for me it was better to know that I did indeed have Parkinson's, because then I could look for the right help and the right things to do to help me live my life with Parkinson's. It has also given me an opportunity and a gift, if you like, that the minute I was diagnosed, I thought of my children and, of course, my husband and my cousin, who's my very, very good friend. She's not just a cousin, and all the people who care about me. And I thought, my husband and I have always been quite a unit and happy in each other's company and not needing many other people around us, actually. So yeah, we had sort of been cruising through life and not thinking too much about when we did things and who we did them with, and we would spend quite a bit of time with each other and by ourselves, but we hadn't been making much time for the grandchildren or my children, my adult children. And as soon as I was diagnosed, I vowed that I would be a better nana and a better mum, and I would support my children and do what I could while I was around to support them and to spend time with those people that I loved. And so it gifted me that sort of wake-up call that I needed to do life better. I needed to be a better nana, a better mum, a better wife, and if I hadn't been diagnosed with Parkinson's, I probably would have carried on just doing what I did and not really bothering too much about whether I saw my children or my grandchildren very much. And the advent of that diagnosis caused me to sit up and take notice and want to do something to connect with my family again. So for me, it's good to know what's happening with my body. I also have arthritis, and after I had a back operation last February 2025, and the surgeon said it would take a year or so for the back to feel more healed and more natural and safer. So yes, so for me it's always been important to face things head on, to know what I'm dealing with. I get really sore feet, and that was happening soon after the operation, and so my rheumatologist, bless him, got me to have an x-ray, and the x-ray shows that I have rheumatoid arthritis in my foot. And so I have had various orthotics provided for my shoes. I've been told to go up a size in shoes. So yeah, back to the program that I was watching that sparked this particular podcast. So the young girl had never wanted to be tested for Huntington's, which is definitely a genetic condition. But towards the end of the program, she had decided that she would get tested. Now, when she told her friend that her father had Huntington's and that it was a degenerative neurological condition that was hereditary, her friend was shocked and asked if she would want to go and get tested to see whether she actually had the condition. And at that time she said no, she didn't. She said she would just not allow herself to meet somebody, to fall in love, to marry, and certainly not have children, because she didn't want to give children this condition. But I think towards the end of the program, maybe she thought she was shortchanging herself, that she wasn't giving herself the opportunity to find out and maybe have the confidence that she wasn't going to get this condition, and have the confidence to be able to fall in love, get married, have children, and all those things. So, towards the end she decided that she would do that. So that was a bonus. Like I said before, and I've said many times, I have lots of different conditions. I have arthritis in my feet, in my fingers, in my back, in my shoulder, in my hands. So I've got pain sort of all over my body, but after a while you get kind of used to it. And we're going on an overseas trip in May, and so I'm getting an injection of cortisone or something in my foot, and I'm figuring it's going to be very painful. So that's not going to be much fun for me. But hopefully the injection will help me to be more comfortable so that I can walk around in the UK without too much pain. So here's hoping that that's something that will happen. And I've also got I haven't got the condition, but I am a carrier. I am a carrier for a thing called hereditary hemochromatosis. Now, hemochromatosis is a very big word, and it is the opposite of anemia. Anemia is a lack of iron in your blood, and that can cause you health problems. And this is an excess of iron in your blood. So those people with hemochromatosis have sometimes needed to have their blood drawn off. I'm going to look things up. So hemochromatosis in New Zealand, apparently, I'll just read from my little Google search. It has therapeutic venesection, phlebotomy or blood removal. 450 to 500 mils of blood is removed regularly, initially often weekly, to reduce iron levels. And it says here that this lifelong effective treatment prevents organ damage, allowing for normal life expectancy if started early. Now, so I'm a carrier, and the only way that I pass it on to anybody is through basically getting together with somebody who is also a carrier, and then our children, as a result, have a high chance of having hemochromatosis. Now, my children have not shown any symptoms, but they could, if they wish, get themselves tested to see whether they have this condition. One of my brothers, actually two of my brothers, have married people that have been carriers as well for hemochromatosis, which is wacky. I mean, how do you do that amongst all the people in the world that you could fall in love with and marry? You have the misfortune of getting together and producing children with somebody that carries a not very nice condition that will affect your child for their lifetime. But we can't help that. So, so there is hemochromatosis in the family, but luckily I don't seem to have passed it on to my children as yet. But I'm a firm believer in getting tested for things that we have a suspicion of, because for me it is always better to know. It is always better to have an idea of what's happening to your body so that you can then attend to it. And I've mentioned the holiday that we're going to have in England this year. And every holiday to England, it's a big journey to go to England and come back again. And so we're going for 8 weeks to make the most of it. And every time we go now, since I was diagnosed, we do some bucket list things. Some things that maybe we can't do in New Zealand, things that I've always wanted to do. Like we went on a canal journey on the Lancaster Canal, if anybody's interested. The Lancaster Canal in England is one that unusually doesn't have any locks. Locks are sort of this stepped system where you can go up sort of like up a hill, whatever. You can raise the boat above sort of the level that they're on by opening and closing and filling these locks with water. And that has to be done by sort of turning a handle and opening and shutting these gates. I'm not quite sure exactly how it works, but the Lancaster Canal unusually doesn't have any locks. It's just like going down the river. And so my husband, bless him, and I also agreed that the Lancaster Canal would give me the canal boat experience without having to get on and off the boat, with the risk of me, probably a real risk of me tripping and maybe ending up in the drink. So it was my bucket list request that we do that, and I needed to be quite fit because I had to go up and down the boat helping with mooring it and taking the ropes away when we were going. And so I needed to be an active participant. If we put it off, if we went later to the UK and then thought about doing it, I may have reached the stage where I couldn't. So we work on the premise that we do things now that would be difficult to do with a walker, or even more difficult to do if I was in a wheelchair. And we're doing all the things where we can be reasonably active. I'm never going to be as fit as I was 20 odd years ago, obviously, but I can keep doing things and trying to give myself the best possible chance. But because I know that in my future, as with most people, even without Parkinson's, my mobility will deteriorate. My husband's mobility will deteriorate. And so while we're both reasonably active, we need to do the things that we can do that are active. I mean, I have walking poles and they're excellent. They're really, really handy. And so they help me to walk over uneven ground, keep me stable, keep me safe. But yeah, all of these things, I took a step back when I got diagnosed and thought about what this condition would mean for me. And this Parkinson's that I have, it has made me closer to my family. It has made me more focused on having friends and family around me. It has made me more focused on doing the things that I want to do with my husband, without my husband, with my children, with my grandchildren, teaching my grandchildren to bake, writing down the family recipes for them. All these things that, if I didn't have Parkinson's, I probably would have just drifted and not even given it much of a second thought. So yeah, for me, it is better to know than not know. To know what I'm dealing with and to address whatever that means as soon as possible, so that I can live a good life and do things as soon as possible that I can do. I don't want to be one of those people that gets towards the end of their life and says, I wish I had done this thing or these things that had always been on my wish list and never actually took the time to do so. So I would encourage you to, if you are thinking that you have symptoms, not just of Parkinson's, or if you're getting lots of headaches or you're getting lots of aches and pains, if you're feeling that things just aren't right, do go see your GP, do go and get tested. It might be that a simple test and some medications can change the way you live your life in a positive way. So that, for me, is well worth being stuck with needles if they can get blood out, which is a bit of a trial for me. But all the tests are worth it if you know what you're dealing with and you can give yourself a more comfortable and better life. So this has been Sue for Parkinson's and Me, My Journey with Parkinson's. Kia kaha, be brave, be strong, be you.